Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed guests, welcome, a warm welcome to the big conversation. It is an absolute honor to see the convening of the global community, both physically and virtually today. My name is Eunice Mora. I am the Chief Editor of Vice Versa Global. We are a youth-led media organization, and we tell and share stories about our diverse continent that shows Africa through the eyes of solutions and not problems, and through the eyes of young people. It is an absolute pleasure for Vice Versa Global, in partnership with the Foreign Affairs Ministry of the Netherlands and other esteemed partners, to have been able to convene this conversation. So let's embrace the time that we have today to converse and listen to each other, exchange knowledge, and see how we can pave way for equal and mutual understanding. But before we immerse into the conversation, let's take a moment to see what people in Nairobi know and think about the Netherlands.
Hello, my name is Evans Ijaka, and today we want to go to the vibrant streets of Nairobi, Kenya, to know and find out what people think about the relationship between Kenya and Netherlands. First of all, what do the people of Nairobi, Kenya know about the Netherlands?
What I know about Netherlands is that it's based in Europe and the capital city is Amsterdam.
Kwa upande wangu kuhusu Netherlands, kusema kweli najua sana sana Netherlands kuna infrastructure mzuri. Netherlands kuna high technology kuliko Kenya.
Literally, I know very little about Netherlands. I know of its capital city to be Amsterdam, and I know Netherlands is located in Europe. Yeah.
Netherlands is we can say is the discipline master of African rascality and the dictatorship of African leaders.
I know it's one of the countries with the highest GDPs in the world, probably, and also it can benefit from the agricultural sector of the African society.
And now we are very much curious to know how the residents of Nairobi perceive the relationship between Africa and the Netherlands. Let us find out.
They can aid us with their high-tech equipments, because also they're very innovative and creative, so like their tech equipments might be different from the ones that we currently have. Very beneficial, because they can aid us with their high-tech equipments.
Sina hapo kusema kweli sijui relationship yao, kwa sababu sijaona vitu mingi ambazo Netherlands inaleta in Africa.
I'm not a key person of interest between these two countries because I haven't researched on that, but I feel like the relationship is kinda mutual. I know Kenya to be transporting some, or to be exporting some like food stuff to Netherlands, and then Netherlands to be bringing back things to Kenya.
So what I know about Netherlands is the host of the Hague International Criminal Court, the ICC, which prosecutes individuals.
From my perspective, I see that there needs to be some more diplomatic relations, maybe, because really right now there's not really that much going on between Africa and Netherlands, but I feel like they have a lot to share. Maybe they can share their technological prowess with us, then we can share our unexplored natural resources with them.
And lastly, we want to see how the people of Nairobi, Kenya envision the relationship between Africa and the Netherlands.
One of like mutual understanding, where it's more or less like Netherlands gets maybe some of the things that we offer, like maybe agriculture, maybe in their farming sector, in turn will benefit from Netherlands, from their equipment. So it should be something really like mutual. Yeah.
Ningependelea in a relationship si tuwapelekee kitu kama soda ash au watuletee hiyo technology. Alafu hapa Afrika sana sana watu tunachifunia culture. Pia tunaweza wapelekea at least ndio tukue na relationship nzuri.
Okay, to be kind of mutual in the sense of maybe to bring, they should be bringing up the technology from Netherlands to Kenya, and us to be exporting things like food stuff, tea, and all those kind of stuff to them, like the relationship to be mutual.
I suppose it should continue like that because The Hague, they control the African politics and they make sure that everything in order. So it's a good relationship and it should progress like that.
If I were in a position that can impact or cultivate that relationship, I'd probably know how to answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, thank you so much for the individuals who shared their contributions and their opinions. This is the African Strategy. My name is Evans Ijaka.
Okay, thank you so much, Eunice, for the elaborate, sharing your vision of how the relationship with the Netherlands and Kenya and Africa should look like. And I thank you, the other active citizens in Nairobi who also shared their vision on the same. So I want to acknowledge the presence of the ambassador for the Kingdom of Netherlands to Kenya. Welcome. And members of the embassies and all protocols observed, feel welcome in the Dutch strategy debate. So I also want to mention a few partners who have walked this journey with us. They share a common goal of, having the equal relationship between Africa and the Netherlands. This is the VSO Voluntary Service Overseas, Mr. Georgia Wala. Thank you so much. Vice versa and vice versa global. We have Amref in the house as well. We have Include. We have the KIT, Tropical Institute, Prisma, MFA Netherlands, and I think that's about all of them. Thank you and welcome so much everyone who is here. The active young people, I see you. I see most faces that I know. And thank you so much for being here. We're looking forward to hearing your thoughts and sharing your vision on the same. So does anyone know why we're here? This is just a random question for someone who would want to share why they're here. A random question. I promise there's no gift, but it's really good to share your thoughts as well. Someone? None? Can I randomly just pick someone now? Yes? Randomly pick someone. There you go. Why do you think you're here?
I'm really excited to be here to participate and just to get to know about Netherlands more and get to hear more from the debate on the Dutch policies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, we want to have a candid discussion on what the strategy is all about. How is it going to, how do I call it? How is it going to support us? How is it going to implement, or how are we envisioning the implementation of the strategy, and what does it mean for you, for me, and for your neighbor seated next to you? So that's much about it, and I want to really encourage every one of us to really be interactive. Your views and your feedback on the strategy is really welcome, to be able to have a great vision and to be able to have a 10-year-long strategy on how best we can have an equal relationship between the Netherlands and Africa in terms of implementing our projects and programs as well. Okay. So thank you so much. So we are going to take it back. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. All right, so do you know that technology can actually do fabulous things? You can be in one place and be in the next one at the same time. And that's what we're doing right here. We are here, we're also in the Netherlands, and we're also online. So we have 3 different platforms where we're airing our discussions as well. We have the team in the Netherlands doing the same thing, and we have our online team listening along with us as well. So feel free to point out all your insights, and I am sure you have the program with you, a white paper. We are going to follow that. It's a very short program, up to 6 p.m. It has it has a panel discussion, which I am really looking forward to having. It has also cultural interlude that we're going to listen to our award-winning artists sharing their vision in form of poetry, in form of music, motivate, empower us as well. And we're going to hear from the Netherlands team at the same time. So stay tuned. And I really wish that we are very interactive on the session as well. So I am going to take it to the Netherlands team. Miriam, are you ready? Are you there? Can you say hello to us?
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Christine. Everybody in Nairobi for being there. Thank you, everybody here in Amsterdam. Everybody online, of course. Today we are at the Royal Tropical Institute. I hear that the name is going to go back to KIT, but for this meeting we'll keep calling it the Royal Tropical Institute. And it's very symbolical for us to be here. It's a very beautiful building. It has marble and wood. It's very stately. But like I said, it's very symbolical because you started out as a colonial institute focused on our territories abroad. But today, the Royal Tropical Institute is completely invested in creating equal partnerships with Africa. So that's why this theme, redefining relations that we are talking about today, this building kind of represents that. So thank you all for being here. We're going to go to a presentation of the Africa strategy, but before I do that, let me introduce the 2 speakers who are going to do the closing words at the end of the session. And this is Ola. Can you maybe stand up so people can see you? Ola Abagun. You are a human rights lawyer from Nigeria, and you are a knowledge manager at Include Platform. And you will be telling us what are your takeaways from today at the end of the session, right? Thank you very much for being here.
Lovely to be here, thank you.
And then we have the director of the Africa department, Jelte van Wieren. And he will also, at the end of this program, tell us his takeaways from today. So thank you for being here. My name is Miriam Chossing. I also work at the Africa department, and I will be happy to co-host this meeting together with Christine today. To the presentation of the Africa strategy, I'm going to invite my colleague Melle Leenstra, who is the knowledge advisor at the Africa department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And welcome, Melle, over to you. Thank you.
I'm very excited to be here to discuss the Africa strategy for 2023 to 2032. It's a 10-year strategy that was published earlier this year, just as one of the last actions before our Parliament closed. It was approved by Parliament. So this is a strategy, this should be a strategy that will guide our interactions with the wonderful continent that gave us humanity for quite a long time. Now, the process of writing this strategy wasn't some civil servant sitting in an ivory tower. This was based on consultation. The Dutch, we like our polder approach, but especially when it comes down to connecting to Africa, trying to make a policy that is based on equality, that is based on coherence, a lot of consultation is needed. So this is a whole of government this is a whole of government strategy. So various governments like the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate, Ministry of Defense, they contributed to the program. The various departments within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs dealing with foreign trade, international relations were involved. But it's even a whole of society approach, because it's not just government that engages with Africa. Civil servants, they do diplomacy, but we have civil society, like a lot of the people who made this happen, who engage with Africa. We have knowledge institutes who engage with Africa, and we have the private sector that engages in trade and investment with Africa. But not just on the Dutch side, also on the African side, consultations were held. We talked to ambassadors, we talked to civil society. My predecessor traveled to West Africa. Colleagues went to East Africa to hear, what do we expect? What do we want to know about this relationship between Africa and the Netherlands? Now, in terms of content, a whole range of topics are covered. Economic development based on an equal footing, migration, return, the issues of peace and stability, sustainable development, poverty reduction. These are all things that came up of what the Netherlands is doing, has been doing, the long tradition of cooperation between the Netherlands and Africa. But the most important thing, and I've already mentioned it, we feel that we have to redefine our relationship with Africa. Africa is not the same as it used to be. Africa is a continent on the move, a continent of young people who are more and more internationally connected, engaged. Africa is a continent of potential. Yes, there are a lot of issues in Africa, primarily the issues for Africans themselves, but these are also issues that are affecting us. We are neighbors, and as good neighbors of Africa, we need to be together, we need to relate, and we need to find a way of relating so that we can work with our African partners to deal with their issues. So this is, in short, what the Africa strategy is all about. There are a number of copies there. There are also copies online in various languages. But the most important thing about the Africa strategy is that we are here to listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Melle. Yes, so now that we are all on the same page with regards to the Africa strategy, we will go back to Nairobi later to get a reflection on this strategy from there. But before we go there, I would like to ask if there's anyone in the room who would like to say something. Yes? I'm coming to you. Yes. And please present yourself. Okay, good. I'll hold it.
Oh, okay. No, that's okay. My name is Irene Sleven. I'm co-director for VSO, and it's nice to be here. Yeah, for the strategy, I mean, it's great to be connected. I think this is how it should be, right? Directly in contact with each other, and I'm so excited that all these young people are now tuning in from all over the world together, and that we are discussing this in an inclusive space. Yeah, at the same time, people ask me, why are young people so invested in this strategy? And I think young people want to take collective action because they see that the problems that we are facing today, climate change, injustice, instability, wars, that it needs really a collective approach, and it needs collaboration. And to be honest, I'm standing here today with a little bit of a heavy heart after yesterday's elections, because
maybe just for the audiences online in other countries, Nairobi, we had elections yesterday, and although we don't really know what that means yet, it may have an impact on the Africa strategy, but we're not there yet. So we're going to be talking about the Africa strategy today, as if it's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So what I would like to say on that is that we just had elections, and the biggest party that was elected is more on the right side. So I think for us it is really important that we as a collective come even more strongly together, and that we really make sure that this strategy is taking place, this strategy is being implemented, and that we can play a real role in ensuring that the Netherlands is a trusted partner, that we go for long-term, sustainable collaboration, equal partnership, and green solutions. So that would be my pledge today.
Thank you very much. It's a collective effort. That's a very clear message. Thank you very much. I'm going over here. Please introduce yourself as well, if you don't mind. I'll keep
no problem. No problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I'm Henry van Egen. I'm a director at the Royal Tropical Institute, and I'll sort of continue a little bit on what you're saying. And I think it's nice to talk about equal relationships and so on, but what does it actually require, an equal relationship? It really requires not just talking outcomes. It means talking relationships. It really means deep listening. And especially to my Dutch colleagues, I would say it requires deep listening. So it's something which is very much on our side that we need to do and move towards more symbiotic relationships, go away from that traditional relationship where there are passive recipients in Africa, but actually move towards more equality. And it's a tough thing to do. We have kids.
Is it? Why?
Well, it is tough because we've been addicted to an old system. And that old system has become very prevalent. What we've seen in West Africa, for instance, with the French way of looking at West Africa, what it has actually, meant to West Africa. And so we must take real deep lessons, and that requires that learning. But it goes also a step further, is that, and we're trying to do that as well as an institute, so we're developing new relationships. And we have new relationship with, for instance, an institute in Rwanda and Senegal, Academia 2063, which is responsible for the agriculture policy of 2063, which is African Union. And what's interesting is our relationship is one based on equality, which also means that there is no financial relationship. We do shared funding, but we do that together. And it is not coming from here to there or anything like that. But we do take deep dives and we sort of say, where can which work take place? And can we re-look at that? And that requires making that deep investment. So I would encourage everybody to move the same way.
Thank you very much. So collective effort, deep listening, but also, I think, important, managing the money together, because it's the money also that makes the relations inherently unequal. So thank you very much for that. I see someone else back there. I'm coming. Yes. Thank you for coming towards me. Yes. Please present yourself.
Hi, I am Nanneke and I'm from Amref Health Africa. We are from the Dutch chapter, so we are called Amref Flying Doctors in the Netherlands. And we have our HQ, our headquarters in Nairobi. So actually that's also where the group is sitting there. Yeah. And what I've learned from working from my colleagues, that we in the Netherlands, we tend to set priorities without listening to what the priorities are from the other side, or from Africa's side. And so it is also about letting go of your own priorities and listening and thinking, okay, what is it that they want? And for example, climate change and health is an example. I don't think it was yet a very high priority in Dutch policies, while you now see that Africans are taking the lead in this whole new area. So in COP28 there will be a health day. It is initiated by the South, and I think the Dutch government is actually supporting this initiative as well. So I think that is also how we can reframe the collaborations.
Yeah, thank you very much. So agenda setting also by the South, a collaborative agenda setting. Anybody else who would like to say something? Well, thank you very much. So we heard it's a collective effort. We need to learn, and that's on our side, like on the Amsterdam, the Netherlands side, deep listening, managing money together, and also letting the South set priorities, set the agenda. I'd like to move back to Christine in Nairobi. And Christine, what is the audience in Nairobi does the audience in Nairobi have to say about the strategy? Over to you.
And thank you for the presentation on the Dutch Africa strategy. Just have a few reflections, and I also stand there with a very heavy heart. I like that the speaker talked about listening and deep listening. I think for me, it's to contextualize the issues in Africa, because climate change throughout the strategy has been mentioned, but it's been mentioned in passing. So if you're going to redefine relationships, then I think for me, one key thing stands out in that whole space, and that space is climate justice. The climate justice imperative has not been captured in the strategy. In fact, it has not been mentioned in the document, in the entire document. Climate change has been mentioned approximately about 24 times, or 14, I could be wrong, but the climate justice imperative has not been mentioned or captured. And the reason I say that is very important for context in Africa, because the developmental issues around us revolve around resources. The strategy is very clear in terms of migration and reception. It's very clear in terms of extractives, but it doesn't speak to protection of those communities that are at the front line, especially around the extractive industries. It doesn't speak to just energy transition and protection of those communities. It does not speak to protection of environmental and human rights defenders. It does not speak to the issues of the frontline communities. And so, while in totality it is a great strategy, and for sure I understand that there's the Dutch International Climate Strategy. For me, for the program that I represent, because it's specifically on climate justice issues, I'd like to see an interface of those two discussions, so that the international strategy really bodies well with the Dutch Africa strategy in terms of the contextual issues around Africa, the geopolitics and the geoeconomics. We're well familiar with them. But how do we also bridge the gap, especially in galvanizing the youthful population as it has been put in the strategy, in digitalization, in terms of bridging those economic gaps? Then in terms of fairness, because we want to redefine these relations, then let's speak honestly and let's speak freely. And why can't we have the imperatives of climate justice? Because it's at the forefront of what we do. The document speaks even to historical injustices that happened across, even down to the slavery, issues of slavery. And so the history is there, the history is clear. And even as we, in this year of the global stocktake and how this shapes within our national determined contributions and action plans, I think the imperative will be to really cement the frontline communities at the basis of our discussions, so that this strategy also speaks to climate change, but embeds the issues of climate justice firmly within that particular programming. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else with a reflection? And then you can sum everything later. A reflection, what does that mean to you if we say equal opportunities?
Hi everyone, I'm Phoebe Mbidi, and I like to say that I'm here as a young person from Kenya. And I think it's key that we have seen the election that happened, and I would just love to hear, just the thoughts, how will this election affect this strategy? Because the reality is money and finance is power. And we are seeing where the power lies right now. And from where we stand, I know it's too early, but from where we stand, how will that affect the strategy? Secondly, my reflection will be around co-creation. I think it's very key. We saw one of the participants from Netherlands sharing how it's very important to co-create. I once participated in or worked for a project that was Dutch funded. It's still Dutch funded, Mekwe, and we saw how effective it was because co-creation was done by the community itself. They could share what they want done. So I feel that would be very, very important. I feel the strategy is a bit capturing that, but how do we want to maintain that in all that we are doing with Netherlands, and not just for Kenya, but all the African countries. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Okumu Adhiambo Linda. I am from Amref International University. We are one, as we sit all here, we are students. We are here to take part in this good initiative. And we are very grateful that we were brought on board to discuss the partnership between Africa and the Netherlands. But what I can say is that also as an African country, we need to reach a point whereby we are no longer just receiving handouts and having partnerships, but we also become equal member states that are able to fully participate in such kind of programs. Not every time we are only receiving. We should also start looking at the part of we are also being givers. That is my take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Eric Lesire Lenges. I come from Samburu County, and I'm a Youth in Action advocate. And mine is just on the issue of leveraging on the best practices from the Dutch and the best practices from Africa. And we thank God at the moment we are receiving very heavy rains. And the big conversation around is touching on climate change and justice, climate change, justice and action. Another conversation is empowering all genders. And I believe that this strategy is a sustainable development goal number 17. As all of us, we know that sustainable development seeks partnerships and collaboration. So it's really a good idea, and I really thank the Embassy of Netherlands here in Kenya for such an initiative. And we are here to learn more. We are here also to listen deeply from the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your input. The aspect of climate justice has really come up very strongly. And when someone tells you something has been mentioned this couple of times in a document, that means they have really taken their time to go through it. You know, like there's 2 full stops at this point, you know, this has been mentioned twice. And I think as young people, which I'm seeing a larger crowd here, it's really good to take your time and read and really know if the strategy is speaking to, it's a 10-year strategy. So if you don't read it now, I'm not sure when you'll have the time to read it, because whatever will be implemented will also affect you in some way. And co-creation as well, Phoebe, thank you for that input. I think it's very key to not just start again, but to co-create the programs and projects that we have, make them better, and the aspect of partnership and walking through the whole journey together. And one thing that has really come up is putting community at the center of development. So it's whatever we do, let's remember the marginalized people at the communities. Whatever we're doing, let's ensure that they have their inputs in the process. They are able to drive the conversations. They're able to influence the discussions as well. And thank you so much for your input. I know that within the program, we'll still have a couple of sessions where we'll be discussing most of the sessions. We have the panel discussion where we will have the young people also putting in their input on what they envision to be in terms of an equal kind of platform for Africa and the Netherlands. So stay tuned for that. At the moment, we're going to welcome an award-winning artist who goes by the name Spontaneous the Poet. So, well, have you ever heard of an art that motivates you as well as entertain you and educates you? So she's all that. And thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the stage. And yeah, let's hear what they have to offer.
Mama once said that to build a future, you have to look at the past. Hey, I'm looking at my past, guys. I am stuck. But it is well, because clearly the future holds fruits. So Mama once said that if you need to build a future, you need to look at your past. Better still, Nerima, you need to use wisdom to be able to utilize this past to propel you to the future. So, if someone ever told me that I would be standing here right now and renewing my vows with you, Dutch, I'd have said they are mad. You'd have said they're mad, right? I'd have said they're mad. Because our pasts are filled with scars. Our pasts are filled with scars to the point where we cannot consider a present in our hearts. Our past are filled with bloodshed, filled with all this pain and slavery to the point that we cannot consider a calm shed in this present. Our past marred with hate and contempt. Our pasts, our continents fall. Reasons? Desertification, diversification, humanity, religion, our pasts, scattered in the ashes within our present minds, our past. Our ancestors might as well be rolling down their graveyards right now. Our past. Can you hear my heart beating? But Mama said, you do not have to live in the past. Mama said, you can learn from your past. Mama said, you can take that brevity and walk with it. You can take that courage and walk with it. Better still, run with it. Run with it. From the golden arrows that put Angola on the map. Who remembers Queen Zinga? Who knows Queen Zinga? I will not ask. From our very own Kilumi dance that had Siotune Wakiduke reign. From the wit and courage of Queen Amana Rines. Who knows Queen Amana Rines? Ooh, someone relates, guys. Because our past was filled with courage, with power, with strength. Africa. So dear Dutch, as we stand in front of you, rather as I'm walking past you, interrogating this paper called the Dutch Africa Partnership, laying my guard down, ready to listen. Speak to me, Dutch. Speak to me. And he chooses to serenade. Africa. Oh, Africa. 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 Oh, Africa. My Africa. My strength, equivalent to the 2.5 billion young youth under the age of 25 by 2050, my Africa. My strength and future. Talk of the 60% of the world's highest solar energy with only 1% utilized. We can do more, Africa. Can't we? Africa, my submissive, with 130 million still depending on humanitarian aid in the stats of 2022. That needs to be fixed. My sustenance, the global national product currently, or rather in the next few years, in 2050, will be 6-fold better, $17 trillion. That's something to work with, Africa. Africa, my future. So walk with me, Dutch says. So I walk with him. He says, walk with me. Tell him. Tell him about the migration and mobility agreement, by the way. It's gonna have the stability of the refugees and the displaced person. Dutch tells me, walk with me. So I walk with Dutch. And he says, together, my dear, we shall achieve economic resilience. Together, your local businesses will have competitive Dutch influence. It says, walk with me and I walk with him. He says, with your raw materials and our combined efforts, we will be able to create jobs. No, wait. That says, we will create magic. Say magic. We will create magic, guys. We will create jobs. We will eradicate poverty. We will do all these things. So walk with me. Africa. 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 Oh, Africa. Do this with me. Africa, 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 oh, Africa. Dutch, thank you, thank you. Thank you for speaking to us in front of the congregation. I know we are holding our hands right now. I know we are laying our guards down right now. But I cannot fail to ask the questions that linger in my mind right now. The question that the congregation has for us today before the Africa-Dutch partnership takes over. Question. How can we ensure that this engagement does not lead to modern-day colonialism? My aunt is very hesitant of this reunion. How do we ensure that our local businesses thrive amidst the competitiveness of the global markets in Dutch? My people are wary. They ask how. How do we ensure that our cultural differences still uphold our culture? My good Lord, our grandparents have their eyebrows raised. How, tell me? How do we ensure that we become prosperous without the fears that we hold in our hearts? How? Spontaneous. Ooh. The heartbeats. The heart cries. Africa, 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 if you're an African, Africa, Africa,
Africa,
Africa,
Africa,
Africa, Africa. Africa.
Africa.
Africa.
Africa.
Africa. Africa. Africa. Africa. Africa. Spontaneous guys with Tajezo himself. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Spontaneous the poet. We can do better with our hands. Yeah? Thank you so much. Yeah, that sort of anchor us to the next session of how do we influence and ensure equal representation on the same footing. And as I was preparing for this session, I asked myself, do I need to get all the data? Because we will be talking about redefining the relationship between Netherlands and Africa. So I was like, do I really need to research all that? But what's the point? Because we're going to have spectacular panelists who will be taking us through the relationship. How, do we need to define it? Do we need to make it better? What do we need to do to ensure that this strategy speaks to us and we speak to it? So, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the panelists of the day. We are going to have His Excellency Ambassador Maarten Brouwer, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Netherlands to Kenya, and Nerima Wako. Welcome so much. She's the director at Siasa Place, a youth-led organization that engages young Kenyans through community engagement and social media. We will have Mohamed Almas, a dedicated champion for youth development, building meaningful networks at the local, national, global level, amplifying the voices on various platforms, and Lulu Bitania, I hope I've said that name right, the youngest program director at Amref, leading the Youth in Action program and also engages in fostering inclusion of youth in decision-making processes. So welcome our panelists to the stage and take your seat as well. Can we have the microphones as well? Okay, welcome. Almas, take any seat. Karibu. Thank you so much for that, and I feel welcome as well. And our first discussion is majorly going to be, as you introduce yourself, tell us what equality, what does equality mean to you? In your capacity as what you do, what does equality mean to you? We're going to start with Almas.
So, yeah. Good afternoon. Well, being put on the spot as the first one. Kenyans have a culture of wanting to be the last. So my name is Mohamed Almas. I'm an advocate for youth development. I work with VSO, which is Voluntary Service Overseas, as a youth champion. Basically, in the realms of youth development, what I do is that I advocate for meaningful youth participation in key decision-making processes. And I also lead youth-led research processes, basically in the digital economy sector, in the informal sector, to understand the aspirations and needs of young people so that we can know what we can bargain for the young people, advocating on evidence-based. Equality to me, I would say, is being able to manage the power imbalances that exist, being able to manage the historical imbalances that exist, to me, it is a pathway actually to equity, because equality without equity is not enough. And I can give an example. If you are to talk about equal partnerships between Africa and the Dutch needs talent in tech from the African end. But again, are you willing to embrace our diverse learning pathways? If you want a data scientist, we may have a very furnished data scientist, but doesn't have a bachelor's. Self-taught from YouTube can still deliver. So where is that equality? Are you going to accept that talent and work? So equality to me, in terms of equal partnerships, I'm picturing it in that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Equal partnerships, indeed. We go to you, Bitania.
Thank you. My name is Bitania, and you said it right. As said, I'm the program director for WIACT, or Youth in Action Program, in Amref Global Headquarters here in Nairobi. And formerly, I was the Special Advisor on Youth to European Commissioner for International Partnerships, where I also played a critical role in the equal aspirations between European and African continent. So this is a very timely conversation to be had. And I do applaud the Dutch government for going forward and coming up with its own Dutch Africa strategy, stemming from the EU-AU aspirations and common agenda that was published last year in 2022. So equality, I mean, my brother here said it all, yeah? Equality without equity is nothing. And equality really depends on the context as well. If we're talking about marriages, for example, we talk about gender equality in marriages, but are there gender roles? What is equality? It really is up to us to define what equality means, right? What equality means for me may be different for you. But in this context specifically, equality is common agenda setting. We're all seated here at the same level of chairs, but are we given the exact amount of time equally? Are our inputs, are they being considered afterwards? It's not just giving a voice, but also, are they being considered? Are they being implemented? And then when they're being implemented, when are we monitoring it together? Are we evaluating together? So all those things come into play when we talk about equality. I guess that's it for me for now.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I hear about influence, not just being there and participating. So are we influencing the discussions? Are we being heard in the process? And thank you for that. Nerima, you can go.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So for me, I'm going to answer in the aspect of, I'm going to give a political answer. So my organization, Siasa Place, means politics. So my answer will be biased toward governance. And I say this because I struggle with the word equality, because even when we look at our own politics, let's talk about negotiated democracy. We have the Council of Elders. There are specific communities and groupings that have a larger say when it comes to matters. And even when you look at Africa as a continent, they play a major role in how even communities function. Even in the baraza, with our work, we work with youth, and you can go to a baraza and youth will not speak before the elders speak. Why? It's seen as disrespect. And so even in that mentality, we have a mentality of ageism. So even to run an organization at my age, constantly battling ageism and not seen as equal in a lot of boardrooms that have to do with governance and leadership. So let's bring that back to Kenya in general and how Africa functions. If I look at even how countries associate with us, there was a mention previously with France, but even look at China, for instance, the East, they do not necessarily interfere with the democratic nonsense or issues, or They are not there, but they'll be like, you know what, we'll build you SGR. We'll give you the AU. No one is talking about the African Union being built by China, okay? That's our headquarters of where our heads of state meet and make decisions. We didn't fund it, China did. So we see a lot of, support us with the finance. We won't ask a lot of questions, fantastic. And then we see a lot of Western approaches, which is a little different, where they're like, okay, we'll help you with some resources, but you need to tell us how you're going to pay this debt. Or you need to tell us whether human rights are being violated or not. And if they're being violated, we'll take that resource from you. So is that equal? And what kind of equality are we talking about in terms of governance relations? So to me, I think that there's a lot of deep listening that will be required and understanding. I don't think that we understand ourselves enough. Africa as a continent is completely diverse. We have thousands of languages, thousands of cultures, that even just driving a few meters here, you've entered another community. And so we cannot talk about equality holistically, I don't think. I think it matters on context, I think it matters on demographic, I think it matters on timing, whether we had an election or have one coming up or one just passed. It actually matters in our continent. And I think for me, it's to applaud the fact that the Dutch are interested in even bringing equality to the conversation. Because a lot of times, equality is not mentioned. It's about interest, and how can we meet that interest quickly, is how I will answer that question.
Thank you so much, Nerima. You've said a lot of things that we will definitely circle back to talk more on that. And we go to Mr. Ambassador. What does equality mean to you?
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy to be here, and good afternoon, all of you. I wish, actually, I would have been 30 years younger. It would have fit in this audience much better. But at least I can talk as the last person, so that helps a little bit, isn't it?
Yes.
Equality. Of course, I read the Africa strategy quite intensively, and the interesting thing is that the word equal and equality does not appear in the strategy. What appears is another word, at least we translate it differently, and that is equivalent. And there is a real difference between the two. Equivalent has the idea of equal, but also value in it. And we are all of equal value. That is what is in our strategy. Because if we would write down in our strategy we're all equal, it would have been the biggest nonsense possible. And I think, Nerima, you already said it, and you also said it. We are not equal. Every person, luckily, is different. Comes from a different context, comes from a different background. So what is this equivalent relationship? How does it look like then? For me, it has a lot to do with respect, with understanding, with listening, with understanding the context. Try to really understand where someone is coming from, even before you have an interaction. So avoid being judgmental from your own set of values, but try to be neutral in that and reach out to people. Go, talk to them, try to understand the context, lower the barrier, and I think then a conversation comes up that is more respectful and more giving equal value to the different partners in that conversation. And that is what the Africa strategy is all about, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Equivalent, I think that's another word that we're going to adopt to this conversation. And coming back to you, with Nerima, you have had a lot of engagements with the Dutch partners. Are there times when you felt like, for some reason, the relationship is not equal?
Actually, no. we are supported by the Netherlands Embassy, and it's quite the opposite because our organization is 8 years old, and we are in partnership with another organization that is almost 30 years old. And at the beginning, when we were building the concept idea in terms of youth engagement and getting young people involved in governance processes, it was interesting that normally, especially when we're supported, they would say the resources go to the 30-year-old organization, the ageism I talked about. But no, they were like, no, this is your expertise, it's youth, so it should be led by a youth organization. Yeah. So it's different. Even sometimes when we share that with our other partners, they're shocked. They're like, I don't have that relationship with any other partner. So I'd say it has also brought about different dynamics and completely different conversations, and also pushing us in terms of measuring our capacities. And, to be able to lead an organization that's almost 30, there also has to be a sense of acceptance where they say, you know what, it's intergenerational mentorship. Because also the work that you're doing heavily on social media, when we were formed, it didn't exist. So we are willing to also learn from you in terms of the aspect of digital tech. So I would say right now, the relationship is going good. It's been 2 years now, and it has been a learning experience for us.
What about you, Bitania? What's your experience working in partnership with the Dutch partners? Is it, and I know you are also working with other young people, so engaging young people in the process, has it been on equal footing? Have the young people been partners and not just working with young people, So how has the experience been for you?
I'll answer from a neutral point, not based on the Dutch relations that I've personally had.
Yes.
Young people have fought their way into decision-making processes. It has not been given to us, we had to earn it. I'm sure all of the young people here would agree. I mean, perhaps the policy spaces are changing now because of the sacrifices and the constant devotion that young people like us have done in the past decade or so. When I started my activism, the African Union, of course, had the document, the Agenda 2063 document in 2015, that was the popular version. They said that they have consulted with civil society organizations, but it was not reflective of youth voices at the time. So we really had to gather ourselves, get together, and ensure that our voices are also represented in the 50-year plan of the African continent. It starts there. Even in our own continent, we have to fight our ways into leadership positions, policy discussions, and decision-making processes. If we're not invited, we have to come with our folding chairs and make sure that we're in there to set our vision for the continent. And it's the same with every other partnership, not just in the continent. So the discussion we had last year when we had the EU-AU Youth Summit, it's not a summit, there was a Youth Day in the Europe-Africa Week, is that it's the same in the European continent as well. What we want is at least 30% representation of young people in decision-making processes in both continents. That's our aspiration. That is besides talking about the gender issue, of course. Young women are much more left behind than young men. And in general, young people are sidelined from decision-making processes. So my aspiration personally for the Dutch Africa strategy is to really meaningfully engage young people, because you can't just leave out 70% of the population. Now, it's not only about a matter of representation, but a matter of equity, because now in 2030, 75% of the population will be under the age of 35. And our voices would really matter in setting the ground and the vision for the continent going forward, and for the partnerships that Africa has with the rest of the world, including the Netherlands. So yes, I would really want young people to be at the center of the partnership. And that's what we do in Amref as well. There is a project that's called Power to Youth that's funded by the Foreign Ministry of the Netherlands, which is doing the same. We're trying to ensure that young people are at the center of advocacy processes to tackle harmful practices, to tackle gender inequalities. And even with the WIACT program, we have one project that's cutting across 21 countries that's working with youth-led organizations to hold their governments accountable. You start with your country, then the continent, and then the partnership with outside globally, basically. So yeah, people-centered youth engagement is very important in the Dutch Africa strategy.
Yeah, and why do you think that young people, or rather women, are left behind when it comes to being part of the decision-making processes? What's the reason for that?
Culture plays, of course, a huge role. My sister here earlier said that, even young people are not expected to speak before the elders in African continents and countries. So we're trying to redefine that and really bring in our relevance. And we have to really capacity strengthen young people to also know what they're talking about. It's not just giving them a seat at the table without building their capacities. So it's very important that we invest in the leadership skills of young people, and then we bring them to give them the equal setting. And of course, I don't even know how to start about the gender inequality because it's a global issue. Even the most developed countries are still fighting with the fact that they're led by young women leaders. It's just a cultural restraint and a long history of how it has always been. But now we're changing the narrative because young people have the capacity, the innovation, and now we have the numbers. We're 75%, so you could not just deny us the rights to really get in there and set the footing right.
Thank you so much. Almas, I know that you have been working with also young people in policy spaces as well, and you've been involved in several different projects with the Dutch embassy. No, not the embassy, the Dutch partners. So how has the relationship been for you?
Yeah, so traditionally, the only inequality that exists here is the financial dependency, where it's been the donor-recipient kind of a relationship that we've been having, not just between Africa and Netherlands, but Africa and many other European countries in the West. But in terms of inclusion, which is something that I'd really commend the Netherlands government for, they have really posed out a very good model, and especially even how they've structured their systems. For instance, we have an ambassador for youth, work and education. Like there's that emphasis on why youth need to be represented. We had the Youth at Heart strategy by the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which gave birth to Youth Advisory Committee, which has membership from different countries, and these are young people. Now at the embassies, we also have youth advisory committees. In Kenya, we also have youth advisory committees. It has even reached to an extent whereby there's an implementing partner working under the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment, the project that I support at VSO, shortlists who is in the private sector, making that milestone of adopting that, having a youth advisory board. This is because it has reached a point whereby youth are now viewed as equal partners, not just being involved at the implementation stage, but also at the design stage of these programs, ensuring do these programs actually reflect the true needs and aspirations of young people. Having activities like youth-led research across sectors, having youth-led design sprints whereby you're having young people designing solutions, co-creating solutions. So I think in terms of the inclusion model, which really contributes a lot to equality, it's something that we can really learn a lot from the Netherlands, and from my experience, that is what I've really picked up very crucially. Yeah, thank you.
So let's circle back to the financial dependency. Yeah, you said that there's the financial dependency that's seen a lot, especially when in the program sector. And do you think that with the financial dependency, there's an equal footing? If we are, say Africans are dependent on the Dutch within their programs, do you think that there's an equal footing on, say, what we do as Africans, what we want to do? We develop our own projects, but still there's that aspect of financial dependency.
Well, in terms of perception, it's very difficult to say we have an equal footing whereby there's one side always asking for more and more and more. To an extent, sometimes what we are given to manage, we don't manage them well. We have issues to do with our public finance management systems. We have issues, corruption that is really affecting all that. So it may seem as a strain in terms of where resources are being channeled. And equality should be, the benefit should be mutual in some type of way. Though we do understand the position of Africa, where we are right now. If you're talking of equal partnerships, based on the capacity, yes, we do want an equal partnership, but we don't necessarily have the equal capacity to contribute to the terms that we may come up in any kind of partnership. So it's something that is really a challenge. It's quite a challenge for now. We are sitting in a position whereby Africa would need empowerment to lead its projects. But again, there are also things that we need to look at, apart from the external factors, external challenges that we face as Africa, the COVID-19 and the likes. We also have our structures, our governance structures. Are they citizen-centric? Do they represent the voices of young people? The people, the community. For instance, while you are making this strategy, I'm sure you may have done consultations with different African specialists and all that. But again, the documents that we have, the policies that we have, the Africa Agenda 2063 and all that, do they really reflect the voice of the people? While they were being developed, were the people consulted? So there's so many things that really need to be looked into to make this strategy work.
Thank you for that. I will come back to you, Mr. Ambassador. So in your experience working with the African partners, what has been your experience? Do you think it's equal representation? Do you think there's equal say? What has been your experience? Perhaps sometimes you feel like your position is too big when you are working with the partners. You can also give us examples in the process to understand that.
Yeah, my experience differs a little bit. We're working in different countries in Africa, and it's not all the same. As I said in the beginning, it's not about equal, because we're not. We're all different. But you need to be respectful and understand also where your partners come from. What I have noticed myself is that in different positions that I've had, that the more your relationship could be built on, let's say, at least also including an economic part of it, the relationship starts to shift. Because then you're not talking about grants, you're talking about basically investments. I think also in the aid programs that we do, we should look much more in terms of investments, because we're not doing it for nothing. There's usually always something that we would like to achieve. Sometimes it's a very clear, immediate goal. Sometimes it's something that's really a little bit beyond the horizon, but still in our interest. And we should share that. I've seen now, here in Kenya, we do a lot with on the economic portfolio. And that is talking about investments and talking about, and then you just be very open and say, well, this is our interest. We think that's your interest, but please express yourself and see whether we can get the two together. And if we can get the two together, we can do investments. When you have this financial dependency, it's always a bit more difficult, because I can understand it doesn't feel like you're on an equal footing. But still, it is an investment in building up a capacity for the future, or a capacity in just getting the partnership with African countries. There's so much that is being decided in the world, in all kinds of fora, where also the Netherlands needs sometimes African support. So there's always an interest attached to it. Personally, I like best when you come with a question and the answer is no. That's a very good conversation to have, because then you go further and you say, why not? Why is it not possible to come? And then you hear the real interest of, yeah, but we look at it very, very differently. And that's usually opening up a very good conversation. The conversation that never gets off the ground is when you ask something and the question is yes, because then it already stops. So the no answer is, I think, very good and healthy in relationship. But what I referred to before also, I think that one of the things that's so important is to try to understand where people come from. Last year we had a scientist in our embassy working on youth. How can we better build relationship with groups of younger? And the study was very interesting, because first of all, the study showed that in many societies, youth have their own way of expression. They use sometimes their own language. They they have their own music. They wear their own sort of clothes, and that expression and that diversity is very, very important. To have your own, let's say, safe ground, and to define your safe ground from which you want to communicate. But the other thing that was very interesting in the study was that by trying to engage with youth, we tend to focus too much on doing something together with youth groups, whereas the main problem often is not with the youth, but with the elder. And that there is a lot of resistance in society to certain interests of the youth. And trying to get that dialogue between the younger and the elder on, and why are you as elder feeling so unsecure? And what are the threats? And building then confidence, building a relationship of trust that can help you to move forward. That was basically the message that was given to us. And I thought that was a very powerful message. Because often that is the case, I think. And we've already come to the understanding that in the whole debate already for decades on the position of women, that for a long time we've got to talk to men about the position of women, and they are part and parcel of it. We should avoid, in working with the youth, that happening the same way, that we're talking to the youth and forget to talk to the elder people. But it's about the relationship between the two, in which the space is going to be determined and the trust can be built for the youth to really come out and speak and share their interest.
Thank you so much. And I just want to circle back to you saying we have evolved from grants, now it's investment. You being a long-term ambassador serving in different countries, you have seen the evolution of the relationship between the African partners and the Dutch and other partners as well. What has been that evolution? And you can also give examples on the same as well.
Well, I remember, I remember very vividly, and that was in my first duty station. I won't mention the country, but that in discussions that we were talking about programs and progress and financial needs and not, that I often had the feeling that I was sitting at both sides at the table at the same time. So on one side of the table I was speaking on behalf of Dutch interests, and at the other side of the table I was more or less talking about what I think that the other party should say to me, which is very weird type of conversation. That type of conversations I don't have anymore. So I think there's a real growth in terms of understanding also from our African partners on what they really want. The problem is, of course, that if you want something and there has to be money, expertise or whatever coming from the other side, you are in a donor-recipient relationship. And the donor-recipient relationship in itself, let's be honest, is unequal. It is unequal. So how to move out of that? And the only way is to go one level above that and not talk about what is needed and what should be given, but talk about what are the common goals? What are you striving for? Why do you want that activity? And what are we striving for? And why would we be willing to invest in that? And if you come to an agreement on the common goal, then you can also discuss, okay, and what is it that you are going to bring to the table? And what is it what the other parties are going to bring to the table? And I think that's going to be a much richer discussion. And I think actually that is the discussion that's already taking place in many of our relationships. But I agree, in a donor-recipient relationship, you have to be very, very careful with this inequality, because there is a power balance that is not equal. But if you try really to understand where the question comes from, and again, look into the context from which that question comes, usually there's a lot of logic and a lot of understanding, and that makes it much easier to come to a decision to invest yes or no. And it's not about only outcomes and results. It's not only I invest so much money and I want to have that out of it. It's much more a common approach and a joint discussion that you have. And I must say, I'm personally deeply convinced that building a good relationship between countries and between societies, that's even more important than countries. That is the ultimate goal for which we engage in all kinds of development investments in countries. We want to have a relationship with partners that we can share. And for me, it is so vital that if you have a conversation also with my Kenyan colleagues, that it's not only about what a Kenyan colleague wants and what, let's say, my analysis is about the situation here, but we should start the conversation with, wow, what is happening in your country? Oh, you had elections yesterday. So what does it mean, etc. What's happening in Kenya? How can you do that? Make the connection. Make the connection. Start there. And from there, you can build on further. And too often, we start, and that's a little bit Dutch, we start up front and say, this is what we want. This is what we want you to do. That is so disturbing and also disruptive in building that relationship. Yeah, you can say, is that new? No, it's not new, because it's a little bit the art of diplomacy, isn't it? But sometimes we forget that the art of diplomacy is just as important in Kenya or in the DRC or in Mali as it is in France or Germany or the United States.
I'd go to you, Nerima, based on the ambassador's reflections. Do you think it's necessary to redefine the relationship between Africa and the Netherlands? And what would be your advice to the ambassador on like a key action that they should focus on in terms of making the relationship better?
I think we should just use the word respect other than equal. Because even the definition, when you use respect and understanding ambassador, makes more sense to me. But going forward, I feel that there are matters that we scuttle on. And I don't know if it's cultural as Africans, because even with the most recent event in Kenya, when the King of England came, and there was a huge debate as to whether he should apologize or not. And we're seeing, even on the continent, people talking about the return of artifacts. There's this sense of, Africans going back for what is theirs and claiming and pushing that space. So respect makes more sense. And even when we talk about how are we going to deal with the issues and how deep do we want to go, I'll speak for Kenya specifically. We have issues with land and these things that we do not touch, and the history of our land, and even the displacement of peoples. And so this is just one country and its complexities. And so when we talk about, partnering, when you're in a relationship even with a person, they come with their complexities. And it's either you understand this is who this person is, and you choose to be with that person, or you choose to ignore their flaws. I think that's something that we haven't answered as a continent. And the reason why I think it's important is because, unfortunately, a lot of young people do not know their history. And it's not intentional. Sometimes it's because of access to that information. I can give a whole brief about it. But Spontaneous gave a very powerful piece here. And many people didn't know the people that she was talking about. And many of us don't know where the name Africa came from. Africa was called Al-Kebulan. That is our name. We do not know that. And it came from the Noors. Ethiopians still use it because they were not colonized. And so these are the parts of history that are intentionally erased. So when you're dealing with a partnership, we also have to understand that the partner we're talking about, some parts of it, or us, has dementia, and some parts of us, it was intentional memory erosion of trauma. We are very traumatic people as well, and we are dealing with it in different ways. And we've not even talked about the most recent issues of immigration, which honestly, people are just looking for opportunity because it's not a home. So I have gone all over the place, but to answer, respect and understanding is key. And let's highlight those valuable words in the strategy, and I think we'll have a better way forward in terms of understanding the complexities of the region when we talk about a strategy of implementation.
Thank you so much. Wow, I think what's coming out is also, as we build a new relationship, what about the old one, yeah? Are we also healing the wounds? Did we forget, or did we put it under the rug? So that's a food for thought for all of us to, think about it as we move forward with this conversation. Bitania, I want to come to you, and we are, well, you've had the reflections from the ambassador, and what could be very concrete steps to implementing this strategy into a real policy, and what are key actions that you'd want to, one or two key actions you'd want to give the ambassador to send to his partners as well?
That was a very strong intervention from you. Let's just give a round of applause for that first. So my question is very easy. We do have a lot of great documents, even in Africa and in our countries. How many policies do you have in Kenya? We've been passing policies year after year, revising them, beautifully written. That's not really what we want from this relationship. The document looks good, but what does it look like when it translates into action, right? So we want accountability from both partners. I know, I heard earlier when the presentation from Amsterdam was being done, that the strategy was developed in consultation with African partners, which is a good start. But will this consultation continue during the implementation? And how are we going to monitor and evaluate and adopt? Because we have new normals every now and then. We had the pandemic a few years ago that really disrupted the whole world, right? So we have to really adapt our strategies to what's happening currently, and we have to build resilient systems to really tackle any catastrophes that may emerge. And when we set agendas together, we really have to have an equal footing. I understand that there's respect and understanding, that's very important. And we're not using the word equality, but common agenda setting is very, very crucial. Otherwise, it's not going to be an equivalent partnership. So Africa has a lot to offer. We have a lot of experts. So let's start there. Why don't we use African experts as well? You know, when we partner and when we address challenges that are for the common good, let's really tap into the potentials of that African brains have to give. And we have 54 countries, and Dutch is one country, right? We have how many people in Africa? My country alone, Ethiopia, we have 120 million people, just as one country. How many people do we have in the Netherlands, Ambassador?
Nearly 18.
Nearly 18. So when we talk about Dutch-Africa relations, I mean, it really has to translate per country, and then, well, me representing an NGO that has coverage across the continent, well, I really encourage the civil society participation. It shouldn't just be consultations with ministers that we don't really believe in, some of us, you know? So it really has to come from the civil society and the NGOs and the non-state actors that have a lot to offer. And also the private sector should not be left out of this conversation. So integrated and multi-sectoral approach for the implementation and constant monitoring and evaluation for adaptation is very important. And Ambassador mentioned a very great point earlier. When we work with young people, it shouldn't just be about empowering young people, but also getting the older generation ready for our leadership. So intergenerational co-leadership is very, very crucial. So us youth advocates, when we demand seats at the table, we're not saying get rid of everyone and let young people lead the countries and the continent. No. There's a lot of wisdom and even history that should be passed down from the former generation to the younger generation. Even to the generations that will come, the Gen Zs, even after us. So intergenerational co-leadership is very crucial for success of any partnership, but specifically for the Dutch Africa strategy. I really hope to see that equal footing of intergenerational co-leadership.
Thank you for that. Almas, we come to you. In terms of the form of cooperation that we have, or rather in your project that you have been working on, is there something that you would want to highlight to be redefined, change something, to be able to have, to be on the common ground as Bitania highlighted?
Yeah, sure. And actually reflecting on Ambassador's remarks on shifting towards investment, giving an example with how the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment works, which deals with the knowledge institutions, civil society, and the private sector. So it's like this. You have an initiative that can create work, jobs for young people. Okay, what do you have in place? What resources do you have already to solve that issue, to solve that, that problem? So the Netherlands government invests in a percentage of the total budget. Let's say you need 100 million to run that initiative. So the Netherlands government doesn't give you the 100 million, okay? You have your part that you're playing, and this part that they're investing in that and also inclusive of technical assistance and all that, which is something that is dragging us, slowly dragging us, something that should be amplified and should be maintained consistently, because it's potentially dragging us out of that financial dependence thing. Another important thing is that we need to look at the gaps that exist between the key actors in this ecosystem when you're looking, talking of how to make this strategy work. We have the governments, we have the private sector, we have the civil society, and we have the community, which is at heart. For instance, we always have issues in balancing between the roles of the private sector and the civil society, of which I can see, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this strategy is really heavily on the private sector, making sure that the private sector also contributes to social impact, making sure that the private sector actually do not contribute to marginalizing even more people, and putting that clear point, where does the civil society lie? We have challenges, for instance, in the civil society. I can give an example here. In Kenya, whereby we had the Climate Change Act in 2016, which gives provisions for having a climate change council that is chaired by the president, but that council has never sat because, one, there are two civil society groups who have been in court throughout. They are fighting for whom to represent that. Until recently, we amended the act. So right now, civil societies are not going to sit down and nominate because it has costed us more than 5 years and things need to move. So now the president will just have to appoint. So there are issues, there are gaps that need to be addressed amongst these key actors that are going to play a very key role in making this strategy work.
Thank you so much. So as we wind up, Mr. Ambassador, how do we make sure that this strategy does not end up in the drawers? It should be and will be implemented with both partners.
Well, if you set a certain target, this strategy is about, and that's the word strategy, is how. How are we going to work together? And that's why this word of, let's say, equal footing, equivalent relations, equivalence between in relations is so important, because it's a lot about behavior, about attitude, about taking the time to listen, to understand, and to come to common ground. And I don't know exactly how to measure that, but it is, I think, the most important element of the strategy. It is not a list of projects or programs that we need to do. It's there is no budget in the strategy, and I think that's correct, because that's not the end goal. The end goal that we're looking for with the strategy is that, well, basically it is a recognition of the fact that Africa as a continent, and I must say I try to avoid the word Africa a lot, because it doesn't do justice to the huge diversity of countries that are on this continent. But you see that the whole group, and a large part of that group at least, of those countries and in this continent, they have become a real player to be respected in the world. And that is what we try to recognize and say, let us find a way of relating with and organizing our relationship with African countries, so that they do have, and we do have the connections, and we can discuss about bigger problems, not only in our bilateral relationship, but also that play out globally. And we can discuss. We hear opinions, we understand, and we will not take many African countries for granted. And by having a, let's say, development cooperation relationship, we expect that also to vote along with us in the UN or in other organizations. No, every time again you have a separate discussion on it. Why are we asking something? Does your partner agree to it, yes or no? And respect also that position. And by doing so, I think this last step that the African continent can make in being a real visible and important player at the world stage, that is something that's very, very important. And I'm using very big words, at the world stage, etc. But it starts on the ground. It starts in the bilateral discussions that we all have, and be respectful on that. So I see this strategy as an inspiration for every little step that we're going to take in the next 10 years. And I hate to talk about these very big goals, because all these different steps on how we do that and how we make those steps, we will build up another sort of relationship. I'm quite convinced that we can do that. And there is a lot of history also in that relationship. And sometimes you have to be very clear on that relationship. I think that maybe not even many people here in the room know that our government made this official excuse for the role of the Dutch state during the slavery period. Not for all Dutch people living now, because they are not involved, but the Dutch state that has a continuity that goes back into history. That's where the excuses were. And that is a way of saying, we understand. We understand the history. And we understand that history was sometimes very, very negative. And we must do it differently. So the Africa strategy, for me, is not separated from that excuse that was made. And we really need to acknowledge that there is history in the relationship, but face the facts and find out together how we can move to the future. And don't take it for granted that it has been forgotten and we're looking so much differently than 2 ages ago. That's too easy. So that would be my point, step by step by step, but also recognizing where we come from and looking for common ground in every step that you're going to take.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. What comes out strongly is the aspect of inclusion of the marginalized people. That's youth, women, including persons with disability and indigenous people as well. I don't know if you've heard the term, but it's coming up very strongly, especially in climate negotiations. And, listening, making decisions from a common ground with respect and understanding. So I think that is something we should take home with us today. And now, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome questions from the participants. 2 questions, and then we take the questions from the Netherlands. Strictly 2 and very straightforward. Where's the microphone? So we can start with George here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm George Awala. I work with VSO. So 2 things for me, especially around trade and technology, and really equivalence or equity, because you said maybe let's not talk equity or equality, but more of equivalence. So what are the thoughts of the Dutch government around technology transfer? How do we ensure that the communities in Africa will also benefit? Because right now, technology and especially data and how data is mined is good. And sometimes a lot of Africa is used as a testing ground for some of these technologies. So how do communities, including even indigenous communities, benefit from that aspect? And then also trade, especially when you're talking about extractive mining, gas and oil and other sectors that are important to most of the European countries. And then lastly, how do we also really empower marginalized groups and vulnerable communities? Because there's a lot of historical things that have happened to them. And as Nerima said, there's also trauma and things that we need to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you so much. On the far end.
Thank you very much for a great discussion. My name is Omar Abdul Latif. I work for the Dutch Embassy in Cairo, so I came from far away. My question is, do you expect any change in the Africa strategy with the new Dutch government now coming on board? This is one point. Second point is, how do you see the agricultural part in the whole Africa strategy? And you already mentioned that there is no budget allocated for it. So what kind of opportunities do you see in this area? Thank you.
You can go ahead.
Well, I hope I remember everything, but there was a question about technology and transfer. We're not shy on exporting our technology, and we do that very regularly. And what is the technology we're talking about? In water programs, you see, not only here in Kenya, but in many programs, you see that the water collection, the water pumps, using digital connections, giving people direct access to water. Those things are being implemented every day, which is new technology that's being used. We are working a lot on logistics, for instance. There's a lot of new technology in many countries on the agriculture sector, for instance. We're working on digitalization of the inspection functions, making sure that goods that are being exported or imported, that they are disease-free. You can make strides on that. There are in many countries activities being undertaken in helping the banking sector to become more transparent, and the accessibility to banking service, also digitally, to improve that. I'm not saying that the only technology we're sharing is digitally, because it's sometimes also just in, let's say, organizational concepts, or in the field of education, or but more important, I think, for Africa, in the field of health systems, and how to do that, and make innovations in terms of what you do at the primary level, the secondary, and the third, and etc. How can you provide health services at the level where the costs are lowest, and the reach, the access of people is the easiest? So these are all kind of technologies that we share on a daily basis, I would say. Marginalized groups, by just making sure that every time you reflect on whatever investment or program that you are running, to ask yourself the question, how does that affect marginalized groups? And is there a negative effect? At least you should do no harm. And that's also what we try to practice. So I think we can do that, but also making choices to work a little bit more in areas that are considered, of where more people are living, that are threatened to be left behind. So leaving no one behind is something that's very, very important. And that's true not only here in Kenya that I know, but I know many of my colleagues are working on that on the African continent. Yeah, the last question on the elections. We can talk a long time about that, but I won't do that, because I'm also, just like all the others, a civil servant. So there is the political level that is making the decisions. In the elections yesterday, a party that is very, very strong on immigration policies, but also has made, or its leaders has made, quite a number of very strong remarks on some religious groups, some, let's say, different communities, not always felt in the rest of the world as respectful. So that is going to be very interesting, that if this party who has won the elections but has no majority to form a government on its own, how the coalition that in the end will come out will deal with these problems. But at the same time, I can only say that we have a constitution, and that constitution applies to everyone in our country, political leader or not. And that was also recognized yesterday by the leader of that party. So I won't spend more words on it, because basically this is a discussion now at the political level, and there will be many people who will advocate for certain issues to be in the new government program. We don't even know what the new coalition will be. Everybody has an idea about that, but we don't know that. And interest will be brought up in the process. We are a coalition country, so it will take some time. I cannot predict, but let's say it will be easily 3 months. But we also have times that it took much longer than that to form a government. So we are just as anxious to know as you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. So right now we're switching to the Netherlands team. Miriam, are you there?
I'm here. Back to Amsterdam. Everybody here has been listening. I would like to ask you a question, because we've been talking about this equal partnership. And one of the things that came up is about the donor-recipient relationship, right? And in Dutch we have a saying that says, wie betaalt bepaalt. So whoever pays decides. And this makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. So is there someone in this audience who would like to explain why it doesn't work that way? Or maybe why it should work that way. But I think we've been hearing today that it doesn't work that way. Is there someone here who would like to comment on that? Yes. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
So we work a lot with Philips. And Philips, together with Philips, we are trying to set up a health quality system in Makwene County and some others. And through that partnerships, it was quite clear that one of the bigger donors or payers of this program was Philips in itself as well, but also the Dutch government. And what we see is to have, it is good in a way that you have companies that are also investing in this and paying, and they realize that if they invest, if they put money in it, in the end they will gain money from it as well, because in the end it will be a longer sustainable relationship. Unfortunately though, Philips pulled out of Africa. So we as Dutch taxpayers, we also contributed to this program. So in the end, we must say it has not succeeded. So I don't want to put any flowers on it, because it is real. Mm-hmm. But I think that if you pay, if you invest, you will create a common ground and you will create business that everybody can in the end profit from. So I do think that it is okay that the payer pays, or the payer decides sometimes, as long as it is in the relationship with what is needed and what is good for the country.
So you're saying, yes, it's not a problem that the money is coming from one side, but I think it was said before, right? The agenda setting should be together. That's what you're saying. But why is that so important? Why shouldn't Philips, if they put the money on the table, why should they decide what's happening?
In the end, they have the potential to pull back the money, right? So it is they have quite a big say, but they will never be successful if they don't listen to the final clients. And that is where the power from the people comes, right? And I believe that if we are ethical as Dutch organizations, so Philips works with Amref, they want Amref to work together with them and help them in being ethical and being a relevant player. So they also know that if they want to be, in the end, successful, they need the power of the civil society.
Yes. So it's ethical question, but it's also an economical question. If you don't listen to the client, you're not going to get what you're paying for, right? That's what you're saying. Well, thank you very much. I'll keep it short because we're running out of time, but I would like to go back to Nairobi. Christine, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Hello? Christine?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We don't see you yet, but
okay.
please
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Take the stage.
Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
If I may respond a little bit to, without going into details on the Makueni program, but it was very interesting. It was a pilot, and the pilot was very, very successful. But it was just to try out the methodology. The next step was that if you want to do that, you want to really make a big investment, you need to come up with money. And there was a sizable fund that came in from Philips, but it was still at a scale of investments that was not affordable by the Makueni County. So we have to look for other solutions there. So the methodology that was piloted was actually very, very successful, but we need to find ways of making it cheaper. And that is the context, which is determining factor there. For the rest, I very much agree that you cannot do these programs, and that was not the case, because in Makueni we worked very, very closely also with civil society organizations there, and we still do. But you need to have the population there, because in the end, it's also a question, how much is that population willing to pay for the services that come and the quality of the services that come, and what is affordable and not. So yes, civil society organizations, crucial in the phase. But I think it was not so much Philips pulling out, but ending a successful pilot and not being able to bridge the gap into the next step, which is the real investment, which is then something that has to be carried forward by more than one party.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. We acknowledge the online team. They've been very, very engaging. I know they've said lots of things. The screen is not showing, but when it shows, I will read all your comments as well. Thank you so much, the panel, for being so engaging, for all your insights as well. We can have bilateral discussions with them after this. Because of time, we need to go to the next session. Let's give them a clap. Thank you so much. And then as they go to sit down, I will have it's called Zawadi in Swahili. Where are you there? Yes? Okay, yeah. I know his name in Swahili, so he'll come tell us the name in Samburu and what it means and why the name as well. Karibu sana. Thank you so much.
With me here is Shazi Music, and we are about to entertain you. It's a really lovely day, and are you happy to be here, or you are happy, or you are here to be happy?
Both.
Huh? So I'm happy to be here, and I'm also happy that I'm here. Yes, I hope someone also and I feel the same way. No, 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 no. Oh no, 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 no. No, 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 no. Nimesumbuka Nairobi, daily mbioni, nimerudia maombi. Mola hunioni, nimesaka mali sana. Sijapata njia ile ya kufuata. Wanasema mara kwa mara weka zana, tena utavuna kile ulichopanda. Ninang'ang'ana naendelea kukazana, ila ninataka kusonga mbele.
mbele kwenye upenyo, natamani kusonga mbele. Ewe Mola nipe uwezo, ninataka kusonga mbele. Mbele kwenye fanaka, uibariki kazi ya mikono yangu. Yawe, 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 Yawe. Oh no, 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 yeah, yeah. Oh no, 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 no. No, 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 no. Oh no, 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 no. No, 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 no. Nimechovya yangu shida, linitaisha nikafuata yao njia, na mawaidha nimetosheka na kulia, natumaini nitashinda. Wanasema mara kwa mara weka zana, tena utavuna kile ulichopanda. Ninang'ang'ana, naendelea kukazana, ila ninataka kusonga mbele. Mbele kwenye upenyo, natamani kusonga mbele. Ewe Mola nipe uwezo, ninataka kusonga mbele. Mbele kwenye faraja, natamani kusonga mbele. Ewe Mola nipe uwezo, ninataka kusonga mbele. Mbele kwenye amani, natamani kusonga mbele. Ewe Mola nipe uwezo, ninataka kusonga mbele. Mbele kwenye upenyo, uibariki kazi ya mikono yangu. Yawe, 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 Yawe. Wanasema mara kwa mara weka zana, tena utavuna kile ulichopanda. Ninang'ang'ana, naendelea kukazana, ila ninataka kusonga mbele. Mbele kwenye upenyo, natamani kusonga mbele. Ewe Mola nipe uwezo. Yeah, so that song, yeah, it's, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
A round of applause for Tajezo. I have a Samburu friend who has been gifting me, but she's never told me that Tajezo means gift. So that's a bone to chew for another day. So the next session is the tour of the world. We have individuals from different countries, Ghana, Somalia, Africa, at large. They will tell us in a very short video form of what the strategy means to them and their work. So, technical team, are you ready?
My name is Mrs. Konane Bambara Florentine. I'm the country representative of Well and That in Burkina Faso, West Africa. I read the Africa strategy of the Netherlands, and I can tell you it's a well-written document. And the main starting point, the entry point of the strategy, there are very key elements for a better win-win collaboration between the Netherlands and African countries. However, I just have one comment concerning the strategy. I read somewhere that the Netherlands will collaborate with democratic authorities. And as you know, in some parts of the African continent, military coups are recurring. I can talk about West Africa in the Sahel region. The last month, the last year, you have seen some military coups occurring. But these military coups that are considered undemocratic are being applauded by the population because the so-called democratic authorities seem to have not done a lot to change things. But the undemocratic authorities are doing things that have been applauded by the population. So my question to you is, are you going to collaborate with undemocratic authorities? Because you said you will work with the democratic one. So are you going to collaborate with the undemocratic authorities? And in the overall, the strategy is well written, as I've said, but I feel that in the implementation, we have to take it very carefully because, like what we say in my country, that it's the field that controls the maneuver. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to listen our thoughts on the Dutch African strategy. My name is Nafisa Khalif and I work for World Vision Somalia. Indeed, the African strategy has many great ideas that are beneficial in the long term and relevant to the development in Somalia and Africa as a whole. While we are at different stages in our developmental process, we share common challenges such as well-being of the children, political economy, women at the productive age, and minorities in general. Additional to that, we also have a high impact of climate change that the whole world is facing, and Africa is very vulnerable for that. As I read through the strategy, I see the strong political will of the government of Dutch and Africa interests. The strategy states that cooperation and collaboration with Africa will take place more on equal terms and more than the interbasty. To ensure equality, we must understand each other's position, concentrate on the relationship, and seek cooperation based on mutual interests. The strategy speaks well to the priorities of women and youth as well as climate change. However, it is silent on child well-being, which is a very important element in today's era. If we don't invest in children's today, in 10 years, a very small percentage of the children will stand to benefit from the investments, the strategies we are developing, putting investments and time to achieve more immediate vision for young, self-assured, and connected population as outlined clearly in the African strategy. I'll say, last but not the least, I encourage the action implementation of the strategy to achieve our common goals and to save many vulnerable lives. Thank you so much.
Hello, I am Victoria Mania, a Nigerian doctoral research candidate in the Africa Studies Center, Leiden in the Netherlands. I explore the complexities of entrepreneurship, startups, and the interplay between formal and informal economies in Africa. The unveiling of the Dutch Africa strategy has ignited profound reflections on the implications for my work and for my work with others, as it is within this plot that I reflect. So what does the Africa strategy mean for the implementation of my work? When I first encountered the strategy, I considered it just another one-to-many approach comparing the Netherlands to the 54 African countries in Africa. However, I reminded myself not to judge hastily and delve deeper. As I continued, I saw the integration of strategies, including fostering a cohesive EU-Africa partnership and prospective trade agreements along that lines. This and many more revealed opportunities for many-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many relationships, awakening my awareness as a researcher. Now, the realization resonated with a deep-seated and collective desire for collaboration, equality, and sustainable development, from mere ideals to actionable principles. I also value the strategy's accountability, aligning with a principle my parents instilled, which is serious-minded people cooperate with others of the same ilk. In my intricate world of transdisciplinary research, the strategy compellingly urges me to align my efforts with a broader vision, resonating within a framework that prioritizes collaboration and practical solutions for equal cohesion. It calls for seeking solutions beyond traditional disciplinary boundaries and invites me to ponder on how I, within my research, can encourage practices within the entrepreneurial and startup ecosystems that not only contribute to economic growth, but also nurture the well-being of our planet and its people. That said, what remains the same and what will be different if I acted in the spirit of this strategy? My commitment to transdisciplinary research and comprehending the intricacies of formal and informal economies remains steadfast, but the spirit of the strategy challenges me to elevate my work. It implores me to place relationships at the heart of my endeavors with a genuine desire for equality and mutual interest. The strategy also introduces a nuanced lens, urging me to explore how my work can contribute to the stability and legitimacy of economic activities that see the formal and informal economic agents carry the gospel of startups to the grassroots, but also explore opportunities for vertical economic mobility for these agents along the global value chain to which the startups belong. In essence, acting in the spirit of the strategy means the infusion of my work within a deeper commitment to people and process. It means that my research must contribute not just to economic growth, but to the broader vision of a stable, peaceful, and secure collaboration between the Nigerian people and the Netherlands people, between African people and the EU people, exploring the one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-one, and many-to-many collaborations that abound. As we navigate the transformative landscape that this strategy brings, rest assured that I will seize the opportunity to ensure that my research output goes beyond empirical aesthetics and rigor, delivering a solution-driven outcome. Thank you.
My name is George Awala. I'm the Business Pursuit Lead for the Horn of Africa for Voluntary Service Overseas, VSO. I'm very excited about the Dutch Africa strategy. I feel that it's fresh, it's an exciting opportunity for greater collaboration between the Dutch government and the African continent. I see light at the end of the tunnel. I'm happy that this strategy really underlines the importance of stability, peace, social cohesion, and security for the African people. It also addresses issues of fragility, climate change, and does promote resilience building, which is important. In my day-to-day job at VSO, I am very much involved in resource mobilization. I'm involved in program development, partnerships development, and also just looking at how we can make our commitments to donors. Some of these donors include the Dutch government, who have funded us on the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment, and also a sexual reproductive health program called MECWE on sexual reproductive rights and intersectionality. At VSO, we believe in holistic and integrated programming. We believe that programs that are funded from the donors should be flexible, should be long-term, they should be reliable. And we hope that the Dutch strategy will promote that and ensure that the funding that comes is reliable and also supports communities that are most marginalized, because as VSO, we believe in working with the very poor of the poor. It's important that we also address challenges around education, around livelihoods, economic opportunity, health, and climate issues, which are really crucial. I'm passionate as an individual about social inclusion, especially disability inclusion. Many African countries have excellent policies, they have laws in place, but you find that the implementation of those policies is poor. There are insufficient budgets, there is corruption, there are issues around capabilities and capacities of the governments, among many issues. So we hope that this funding and support to Africa will support accountability and holding those who are in power accountable so that they can really provide support that brings positive impact to Africans. Local solutions should be the starting point. It's important that persons with disabilities, sexual minorities, teenage moms, and others who are excluded, like sexual minorities, are at the center of development processes. I do hope and believe that the Dutch government will be committed to ensuring that the very poor and marginalized are at the center of the development process. Nothing about us without us. That's important. It's also important to really work towards inclusion, inclusive societies, or working towards SDG number 11 on inclusive societies is something that is important. I also do hope and pray that the Netherlands continues to be a reliable partner, a partner who really is interested in the socio-economic affairs of African countries, on their equal participation in economic processes, including trade, and also looking at issues of poverty reduction and health and climate resilience. Thank you.
My name is Amy Beth Kwanson. I'm the CEO and founder of Kawamoka Coffee Roasters, Ghana's largest specialty coffee roaster. We know the Dutch Embassy primarily through Orange Corners, where we participated in capacity building and friendly finance to grow our business. What does the Africa strategy mean to us? First of all, we're very excited by the prospects of, a long-term strategy that is documented for Africa. And it touches on key points, key areas that are significant to us as a women-led, youth-led business in agriculture. And one of those is gender equity. So how does the strategy include women in their value chains? For us, we had the opportunity to supply the Dutch Embassy in Ghana with coffee. And that's a good example of how policy can move beyond rhetoric to actionable steps that include women in procurement. How can the strategy be more equitable? Looking at it from a policy perspective, how can multi-stakeholder engagement be high during, implementation of new legislation? If you take the Green Deal, for example, is the farmer who this legislation is going to impact equipped to be able to evolve, to compete and participate in global chains, or will they be excluded by the new legislation? As young people also looking to trade globally and in Africa, particularly with the introduction of the AfCFTA, any African strategy would be lacking without concrete measures around e-commerce, payment systems, security of the region, and also more friendly shipping costs for young businesses.
My names are Elizenda Himbazi from Help a Child, Burundi. Born in Burundi, raised in Kenya. So despite not being able to make it in the room today in Nairobi, I just want to let you know that the place holds a special place in my heart. And it is with excitement that I get to share my warm greetings to everyone in Nairobi, in the Netherlands, and all the people joining around the world through the internet. First and foremost, why I find this conversation interesting is because the Netherlands has been a consistent partner to Burundi and the East African community, specifically in promoting peace, stability, security, social cohesion, as well as the development of the agricultural sectors. The Netherlands has been known to promote increased participation of youth and women in designing and implementing development-oriented programs, and I hope that today won't be any different. I'm looking forward to an open and critical conversation about how youth and women in Africa and the Netherlands can contribute towards the Africa Free Trade Agreement, how we can address together or collectively global crises that have affected all of us, how we can address climate change, the recent Nairobi Declaration, promoting a green economy, promoting digitalization, continued peace, stability, and security in our countries, how we can also promote increased and scalable trading opportunities between Africa and the Netherlands.
Thank you so much. It's amazing to listen to people from different parts of the world, the continent, and saying the same thing. I think conclusively what I hear is a key asking the African strategy to promote projects that are flexible, that are long-term, that are reliable, and something that's inclusive and accountable in addressing key challenges in education, in climate change, in health, in livelihoods, and all other aspects. And yeah, thank you very much for that. We're coming towards the end of our session today. And, you know, before we hand it over to the Netherlands team, I just want to say one thing. I think the African strategy is one thing that we have in common, but we all have different responsibilities towards reaching to that goal. So it's not up to the ambassador, it's not up to Jojawala, it's not up to anyone here, but you as an individual to ensure that we all reach to that goal. So what are you doing as an individual? That's something, that's a food for thought as we go home. And I want to take it over to the Netherlands team. Miriam, are you there?
Thank you very much, Christine. I want, before exactly we're going to the closing of this afternoon, thanks everyone online, thanks everyone in Nairobi and here. Like Christine said, play your part in implementing the Africa strategy. That is not just up to us, that's up to everybody. That's what the Equal Partnership is about. I want to thank all the partners that helped us organize this, Amref, VSO, Prisma, Include, and of course the vice versa team who organized, who did the real organizing and the real running around. Thank you very much, team in Nairobi. And I also want to thank, of course, the members of the panel, Bitania, Berhanu, Mohamed, Almas, and Nerima, Wako, and of course, our ambassador, Maarten, Brouwer. I would now like to give the floor to Olo Abagun for your takeaways of the day. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's been such a pleasure to sit and listen to all the amazing contributions made here today, especially by the young people in Kenya, in Nairobi. I like to refer to myself nowadays as young-ish. A few things stood out to me, throughout our interactions and our conversations today. I heard clearly that the spirit of the strategy, as people see it, is a very collaborative spirit. Someone mentioned co-creation, someone mentioned common agenda setting, and there's even been some sort of debate around, using the word equality or equal partnership. Well, I'm going to be bold and say yes, we should use the word equal. Equality really matters, and equality is not sameness. This debate really reminded me of a Nigerian proverb, and I'll just translate it. When translated, it means that in the business of hand washing, there's no dominant hand between the left and the right. The left washes the right, and the right washes the left, and that's how both hands become clean. And this proverb is really important because as a Nigerian child, one of the first things I learned was how to use my left and right hand properly. Just a heads up, if you're ever in Nigeria, don't give someone something with your left hand. It's regarded as, being disrespectful, because when you do your other business in the loo, this is the hand you use. And I was taught that, to shake people, to give people a handshake that is respectful, to do a lot of dominant things, I would say, I use my right. But it is these same elders who have come to say that when I'm washing my hands, there's no dominance. The two hands, the two palms are different. They perform different functions normally, but in hand washing, they come together and clean themselves. And that's how I see the strategy going forward. That's how I see the partnership between my continent and the Netherlands going forward. There's also been a little bit of a debate around, I love the question that Miriam posed, should the payer decide? And I guess it also brings to the fore how we see value, how we define value, especially within our economic context. A lot of value is placed on money. And of course, I would not be naive to underplay the power that money carries. Money has a lot of power. But there's also people power. Money enables ideas to go forward. Money enables social cohesion. Money enables all of us come together. And so there are other things that are equally valuable, not the same, but equally valuable. And I think it's important for all of us to take that forward as we go through the strategy. Not who brings the money, but everyone who brings the value should be recognized, should be respected. We should facilitate mutual trust. And that brings me to the next point. There's been a lot of emphasis on listening, and many people have even said deep listening, which I like very much. And the idea is not to bring the usual suspects to the table. I think it was Bitania who mentioned that young people for a long time have been bringing folding chairs to the table. And going forward with this strategy, we need to take a stand and say, no. Rather than have people bring folding chairs, we need to expand the table. Expand the table to people who are usually on the margins, particularly on the African continent. Women, non-binary people, people living with disabilities, religious minorities. Everyone should have a seat at the table and have a say with matters concerning them. You know, we know that when you are not at the table, you're either on the floor, waiting for scraps to fall off the table when everybody on the table has had their fill. Or worse still, you're on the menu to be eaten up. And we don't want that, do we? We want the table to be as representative, as diverse as possible. Finally, I would say that it is really important for us to take an inclusive development lens and indeed a well-being economic lens to the strategy. And I'll say why. At Include, we've been for years, we've been demonstrating, showing evidence that economic growth, as we typically call it, doesn't trickle down to everyone. You see countries like Nigeria, my home country, with the highest GDP per capita in Africa last year. Yet, you find that there is a lot of disadvantages, a lot of inequities. This growth and development doesn't trickle down. And we have to be very, very careful about the kind of metrics we look at for development. I know that there's a lot of emphasis in the strategy about resource partnerships. There's even an interesting one, fostering prosperity leap in the private sector. All of these are really, really important. But I think we also need to pause and ensure that we're not leaving the well-being of our people behind. Someone put it very, very succinctly and said, we need to put communities at the heart of the Dutch Africa strategy. And that really sums it up for me. We need to look at social cohesion. How are people coexisting together? How are people living with each other? What are the metrics of belonging? Those are important metrics in economic development, in growth as well, not just GDP per capita, not just money. And I hope that we can go forward looking at the unique value that all of us bring to the table and own the strategy to ensure that it doesn't go into the drawers, as someone said, but it's a living, breathing document, and it's fostering a collaboration that all of us can be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ola. So I'm going to give the floor to Jelte van Wieren, the director of the Africa department. He just asked me, he said, should I really be the one to speak last? And I said, yes, you do, because this is an opportunity for you to show us that you have been listening. We wrote this Africa strategy, and we are going to be held accountable for this strategy. So even though it takes everybody, it takes a village, so it takes everybody to implement it, but we are going to be the ones being held accountable. So please let us know your takeaways and how you're going to be accountable. Thank you. Oh, yeah, you can, yes.
Wow, that was incredibly inspiring to listen to all these views around the world, around the African continent, and here in the room as well with regard to what we are trying to do. And it's just too much to sum it all up, but I've picked a couple of things out of the discussion that I would like to spend a few words on. And the first one is the very first question that we need to ask is, do we really need a strategy? And the easiest answer to that is yes, it was a political agreement. It was in the coalition agreement of the last cabinet that we need to do it, so it needs to be done. But the question runs a lot deeper, and we spent quite some time discussing it internally about, okay, we got a political deal there we need to implement, but how can we make the most out of it? And to me, that leads to one of the things that has already been mentioned by Mela before, is we didn't want to write a strategy about Africa. We wanted to write a strategy with Africa. So we spent a lot more time than we normally do consulting with organizations, both here and in Africa, individuals as well as organizations, think tanks, governments, businesses. What do you think should be in there? And we put all of that together in the beginning of the writing process. And that has been extremely rewarding, because I can really say with authority and also with conviction that what we have written down in the strategy are not the things that the Netherlands wants to reach in Africa, but are a joint effort of our ideas, our interests, combined with really serious listening to what African countries and people and organizations have told us. Then the second thing is if you talk about a strategy, writing a strategy with Africa, what are you trying to change? What needs to change? So what are the big goals behind there? And there, to me, again, there are two issues that are crucial. And one of them is that, and I just call it, we have to pull up our leg as the Netherlands to come up to par with what African countries, African organizations expect of us. But also we have to pull up our leg because Africa has moved on. And most of our policies are more or less based on rather old-fashioned ideas about what Africa is in its essence. And these ideas are no longer valid. Africa is the continent of the future. We are talking about, it's been mentioned before, 2.5 billion people, a lot of them very young people in 2050. Incredible economic opportunities, incredible risks at the same time, and also a lot of problems that need to be addressed. But we are neighbors. We have to find a way how to deal with them because they touch upon the interests of Africans and us. So we felt that it's time that we write a strategy that reflects the way Africans want to see the other part of the world look at them. And I think that's part of the text that you find. And after the text had been finalized, but even in draft versions, talking through it with African counterparts, I got a lot of positive reply on that. And the thing that was mostly said, it's a bit late, but it's quite good. The nice thing about doing it in this way is that I know it's not something that will be contested or very controversial in talking to Africans, but we have a second reason why we need this strategy, and that is about the situation here. Now, there were questions about the election before. We can say a lot about that, and our ambassador in Nairobi has explained why it is so difficult to say anything concrete about that yet. But there is another problem in Dutch society that we need to address, a problem in the Dutch government, a problem in society, that they have the same old-fashioned ideas in general about where the African continent is. And that is hurting us in terms of trying to realize what's in the strategy. So we have an agenda here of trying to tell people stories about what is going on in the African continent and how the Netherlands can play a role in stimulating the developments that the Africans want themselves, and why this is beneficial for us as well. So this story needs to be told, because we cannot stay in this old-fashioned way of thinking that Africa is just a continent of poverty and conflict and maybe beautiful nature and safaris and that sort of thing. That's not what Africa is about anymore. And I think a lot of you probably have all seen that, but a lot of people in the Netherlands have not. And if we don't change that mental map, then all of the chances and possibilities that African-Dutch cooperation offer us, both in terms of private sector or be it in terms of economic cooperation or otherwise, we cannot be able to use it if we have the wrong idea about the reality. So that is very important. So it's about, for me, it's about two things. It's about the equality or equivalence, as Maarten calls it. Maybe that's even a better word. But it's also about the coherence of what we do. And we saw somebody from Ghana, who comes from the coffee sector, speaking. I think that's a perfect idea about what the agenda for us in the Netherlands should be and will be. Is when we talk about the coffee business or cocoa business in Western Africa, there are a lot of opportunities to increase our investments in the whole product chain or in the value chain in Western Africa. And there's an increasing ability and willingness from the private sector in the Netherlands to do that. And you all know how important cocoa is, or the Dutch cocoa sector is internationally. However, and we've heard that last Saturday as well in Amsterdam when we had discussions in the Africa Day, if you look at import tariffs in Europe, On raw materials, raw cocoa, it's 3%. And on processed chocolate, it's about 10 or 12% higher. That needs to be addressed because that's incoherent. We cannot stimulate investment in furthering the value chain in Western Africa if we still have this imbalance in what we are going to tax when the products come our way. We need our colleagues in other departments. And that's why it's so important that this is a strategy which covers all departments, because it's a government-wide strategy. It's been agreed upon by the cabinet at the highest level. So we, as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, if we see these incoherent examples of how the Netherlands deals with issues in Africa, we can rightly say to our colleagues from other departments, this is something you need to address. We never had that chance before. We never had it before. And the strategy gives us an opportunity to be far more strict on these things. Which brings me to a question that has been asked by somebody in the audience, is how are we going to deal with the implementation? And how are we going to make sure that the consultations that took place are part and parcel of the implementation as well? We are now in the process of determining how the implementation will look in detail, but we know that consultation will be a very heavy part of that. So we will come back to all of the people that we talk to, but also invite others to do that. We have already engaged the African ambassadors in the Netherlands and Brussels in telling us what their examples are of good and bad behavior in terms of coherence so that we can use it in our internal agenda. We will consult with many more along the way, and we even are thinking about trying to measure things that are very difficult to measure. We mentioned the equality, equivalence, but also the coherence, but especially this feeling of equalness. How do you measure that? Well, not in hard figures, I can tell you, but you can measure it. You can ask people their opinion. You can validate what people think about the quality of cooperation. And that's exactly how we want to try and do that. By looking at the issue now, in the beginning of the implementation period, we got 10 years of time, and then halfway through, do another extensive research by independent researchers as to how is this quality of cooperation being perceived in African countries halfway through the period of the strategy, and learn from it. So these are the kinds of things that we are trying to do now, and we need everyone. We need organizations in development cooperation, private sector entities, young people, NGOs, everybody to help us out and to keep us sharp on all of these issues, because we really need to have information that feeds into our system in order to be able that we can do our work in a proper and a good way. Now, in closing, I once more would like to come back to the quality of the discussion and thank everybody that participated. This is extremely valuable for us in trying to work our way in implementing the strategy. And I hope to see you again soon in the course of the implementation and do this discussion again and then find out, did we do well or didn't we do well? And then learn from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So from now on, it's implementation, 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 and for you to hold us accountable. Thank you very much. I'm going back to Christine in Nairobi. Are you there for the last music interlude? And then we also go to drinks outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Miriam, for that. And now this comes to the end of our session today. It has been such an engaging conversation. And speaking from a personal level, this has been an eye-opening. And let's not put the strategy in our drawers. Let's not have an ambitious strategy and then like sometimes we say in the climate space, we have a lot of ambitious policies in climate action, but now in terms of implementation, nothing happens. So let's be vigilant, let's make use of the strategy to also speak to our needs, speak to our challenges, and build each other in the process. So with that, I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for an engaging session, and that's the end of our debate today. Thank you so much. Yeah, just not to forget the online people, the online community. A really great thank you to you for engaging.
Yes, now I need you to say I.
Hi.
I need to say hey.
Hey.
Tell your neighbor you look wonderful.
You look wonderful.
You look wonderful. So the next song, it's again is gender-based violence. And I wrote it with my dear friend here.
Shazi Music.
I hope you're gonna enjoy. No, 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 no. Juzi nilikuwa nimetulia kwangu nyumbani, kwa jirani nikasikia kelele za kuhuzunisha, nikasongea kusudia kuelewa kinachoendelea. Mbona mke analia, wampiga bila huruma? Kumbe ni kawaida, toka kitambo ni mazoea. Pesa pia natafuta na mapenzi unazidishia. Vita si suluhisho, no, si suluhisho. Vita si suluhisho, no, si suluhisho. Usipende vita rafiki, mapenzi mtunzie. Si lazima tuishi hivi, inaumiza roho. Usipende vita rafiki, mapenzi mtunzie. Si lazima tuishi hivi, inaumiza roho.
Kila wakati ni matusi, vita imekuwa ni kawaida. Hatuwezi kuongea kubadilishana mawaidha. Mume wangu wapishwi, anajiona shujaa. Hata ninaogopa sema yeye akosi vitisho. Imekuwa ni kawaida, toka kitambo ni mazoea. Pesa pia natafuta na watoto nazidishia. Heshima mimi nampa, ila sikosi kilio.
Usipende vita rafiki, mapenzi mtunzie. Si lazima tuishi hivi, inaumiza roho. Usipende vita rafiki, mapenzi mtunzie. Si lazima tuishi hivi, inaumiza roho. Usipende vita rafiki, mapenzi mtunzie. Si lazima tuishi hivi,
inaumiza roho. No, 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 no. Yeah.
Usipende vita rafiki, mapenzi mtunzie. Si lazima tuishi hivi, inaumiza roho. Yeah.
Thank you.
So for the lovers of rumba in the house, can I get an aye? Aye. Yes. Welcome to the stage. You can dance with us. Batoto Bakongo. Welcome to the stage. Feel free to dance, eh? Sa mama. Mpenzi baby, you know you are my only lady. Lakini lately baby, tunazushiana daily baby. Wani wawa baby, ukisema unaondoka mimi nitachizi. Wani wawa baby, ukisema utarejea mimi nitachizi. Siwezi lala kitandani bila wewe, siwezi rudi nyumbani nikukose wewe. Siwezi lala kitandani bila wewe, siwezi rudi nyumbani. Siwezi, 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 siwezi bila wewe. Siwezi, siwezi bila wewe mama, siwezi, siwezi. Baby, you're my baby. My baby. You're my baby. My baby. You're my baby. Oh.
Sio mara moja, mbili ama tatu nimekusamehe. Sikukuu yetu tulipopatana imekuwa si muhimu. Vitu ndogo ndogo ninazozifanya wewe uzioni. Mimi nimechoka, maybe nikienda utakuwa sawa. Unashinda ukisema eti wanipenda ila misioni. Mimi nimechoka, maybe nikienda utakuwa sawa. You're my baby, my baby, you're my baby.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day.